My name again is Sam Donovan, and I'm the Director for Outreach and Strategic Engagement with BioQuest. And I'm playing the role of social facilitator and introducer for our keynote today. And again, we've made a lot of strides participating in online webinars, collaborating at a distance, understanding how people who are at different institutions and different work situations have very different constraints and opportunities. So I just want to remind us as a group, a community, that we want to be open to the positions of others and listen carefully, not dominate conversations. This will be a large session, and so we request that during the presentation you place questions. We encourage you to put questions into the chat, and Deb, who's running the technical support, and I will help Travis with that. And after the talk today, we'll then have some open question and answer, and then we will go into breakout groups with our discussion bunches again to rehash the talk and generate some questions, and we might post them up to the forum to get some input. So that's the social part of how to participate, and please put questions in the chat if you have them. Now I'd like to turn my attention to welcoming our speaker. I'm very excited. Travis York has been working at AAAS for a while, and his position is the director of the Center for STEM Education Workforce. AAAS being the American Association for the Advancement of Science. And in his position as director of these education programs, he oversees a diverse portfolio of projects, many of them with NSF support. And I was introduced to Travis recently when I sat in on a webinar that he led around submitting IUSE proposals, a big NSF category that many of us write to. And he is very well versed in how the landscape is changing and how we need to kind of keep moving ourselves forward as a group and supporting each other. And so I hope you'll welcome me in join me in welcoming Travis as he presents a catalyst for change, defending and reimagining STEM education in uncertain times. So glad you're here, Travis.
Thank you, Sam. Hi, everybody. It's wonderful to be with you all today. I'm going to get my slides sharing. Here we go. I think everybody should be able to see those now. And I appreciate everybody's patience with me as I seek to kind of manage the chat. I appreciate Sam and the CUBES team, or the BIOME team, really, for helping manage the chat. I will try to get to questions. Feel free, as Sam said, please feel free to post questions in the chat, and I will get back to those as much as I can towards the end of my talk. I do hope that we'll have a good amount of time for Q&A today, and I know also obviously the discussion groups. So as Sam so nicely mentioned, my name is Travis York, and I serve as the director for the Center for STEM Education and Workforce at AAAS. So it's really an honor to be with you all. This is my first time at BIOME, and I'm really excited to get to partake in part of the meeting. I looked at your agenda. I'm sad that I have a day full of meetings in the next several days, and then I can't participate in more sessions. But the agenda really looks phenomenal, and it's so lovely to see so many friendly faces and names in the participant list. It's lovely to be here. A good colleague of mine who was recently serving at NSF messaged me when it was announced that I was going to be sharing the keynote, and she messaged me and said, "BIOME is my favorite conference of the year. I'm so excited you're going to get to experience it." And so I'm really pleased to be here. So without further ado, today I'm really hoping that even though we're connecting virtually, that this is, I really see this as really an incredible opportunity for community for a community moment and for community momentum. It's a chance to pause, to reflect, and strategize together. And today, I really hope that we can chat a little bit about the current moment for STEM education, but also really diving into ways that we could respond as educators and as leaders, and how we can leverage resources and community power to really be true catalysts for change. In my title slide, I pulled in a social media video there of I am a social scientist by training. I appreciate you all letting me hang with you. I know many of you are in the quote unquote hard scientists, but I really do love to geek out about all science. And the moment I had decided around this talk around catalysts for change, this social media video that had been going around that I absolutely love, these kind of chemicals coming together in this droplet of water, and I just think it's such a beautiful, really cool, engaging way. And that's one of the things that I love about working in the broad STEM community. I really think about science and innovation as tools that all people in society, I think, should have to really help us think about how we understand the world around us, how we make sense of the world, how we measure, how we apply, how we organize, and how we really seek to be a part, in my opinion, really good stewards of being a part of the world that we're within. And I think STEM and STEM education provides fundamental kind of basis for how a society and how groups of people can do that. And so it's, again, a pleasure to be with you all. As I mentioned, I want to acknowledge upfront, that this is really a pivotal moment. And it's a pivotal moment for STEM education on multiple fronts, in the space of higher education, in the space of STEM research and innovation, but in particular in the crosshairs of those, the kind of combination of this work, in particular as we think about workforce needs, science and innovation needs, and really the reality that we as a country, the United States, need far more people going into STEM careers than we currently have. And so we have a dual importance and opportunity around thinking about how we increase pathways into and through STEM talent development, and really thinking broadly about how STEM skills are needed across our society and across the US workforce. So I acknowledge that we're facing some really kind of unprecedented, I'm sure we're all tired of hearing that word, but really unprecedented, I would say, change and transformation in this landscape of STEM education. We're dealing with funding cuts, legal and political pressures, real concerning, I would say, pushback on opportunities within STEM and STEM funding, and a long tail of post-pandemic recovery. And I think in the midst of all of the other kind of current issues that we're dealing with, it's hard to keep in mind too that we are years away from, I think, in current histories, one of the biggest pandemics, and most impactful pandemics, certainly of the last several generations. And so at the same time, all of those things going on really create this kind of perfect storm, which demands more than just resilience. It demands innovation. It demands collaboration. We cannot keep operating, although I don't think anybody is, as though it's business as usual. That really isn't an option. And I want to take, in that space of tremendous stress on our systems and tremendous opportunity, I also want to be very wide-eyed and open about the fact that this is my Southern roots coming through. Y'all, like, we're exhausted, we're overextended, and in the midst of this relentless pace of change and adaptation, this relentless kind of do more with less, literally on physical fronts, on financial fronts, on all of this sort of space, we're still, in particular, you all, faculty, teachers, educators, informal and formal leadership, we are tasked with both protecting and teaching simultaneously, and navigating that complexity while ensuring students get what they deserve, and that we're attending to their academic and affective progress and outcomes. That is a tremendous ask. And I don't, I know at least in popular media, that is not recognized well. And so as a part of the community, I've been working in DC. This December will be 10 years for me, having worked in the association landscape, but I am still very much a recovering professor. And and I never really feel like I've left the classroom or left academia, because I'm constantly working in that environment and just thinking about how, even in my work at various associations, how that work in the classroom can be benefited by better structures, better policy, better funding to support the incredibly important work in higher education. I myself am a first generation college student. I'm the first person in my family to go to post-secondary. My mom did go to post-secondary for a semester to a college, but didn't complete. And so my sister and I are the first in our family. And that experience has very much informed my pathway and my research and my work into trying to understand how we increase opportunities for all people in higher education, in K-12 education, and broadly in STEM. And if you've heard me talk about my past before, you also may be aware that my sister started off as a STEM major and did not complete as a STEM major because she had a very, very different experience than I did. And while I would love to tell you all that it's just because I'm so much more brilliant than her, the reality is that my sister and I are both half Indigenous, and my sister's complexion and dark hair color and the amount of melanin in her skin and the fact that she's a woman, I think all were contributing factors to her experience in ways that it shouldn't have been. And so understanding that experience and how different it was from mine, two people growing up in the same household with very much the same kind of context, it really was clear for me where I was receiving unearned benefits or privileges that my sister was not. And so that's what led me into my work. And I just want to take this moment. We're going to talk more about kind of both how do we build capacity for ourselves in resources, in materials, but also the kind of well-being and resistance of ourselves. And I just want to start by saying, like, the showing up, that is part of leadership. And I just want to thank you all for your continued efforts to show up. And I think we have to be saying that to the students we work with, those of you that are preparing the next generation of K-12 STEM teachers. I know many of you work not only in undergraduate STEM education, but also in teacher preparation. The showing up is so important. So thank you for all that you will do, and for encouraging others to continue to show up in those ways. So I don't think that I'll need to convince you all much of this, but there are several reasons why I think we have to continue showing up. And no surprise, I'm going to start here by talking about, the reason why we stay engaged is because the stakes are too high to step back. And we can think about that in terms of our students. Our students need us to keep the doors open. They need us to for them. I know, in many of us are thinking about and dealing with in a space where we have reduced federal grants and research opportunities. What effect will that have on graduate student research and undergraduate student research? We know it's a high impact practice. We know that earlier engaging research, real world problem-based learning, those sorts of opportunities have tremendous impact on our students. And obviously, the research infrastructure that we're looking at from a funding perspective that's a real threat that we have to contend with. This availability of opportunity to participate in research and innovation matters to our students' persistence, it matters to their preparation, and it matters to their careers. We have to continue thinking about those opportunities. There's an obvious impact, even though for some reason, well, I say it's obvious perhaps to us, maybe not obvious to the broader community around the economic impact here. The US needs at least 3.5 million more professionals moving into STEM jobs this year alone, to stay competitive globally. And we're already seeing downturning trends. AAAS, we produce usually every 3 years, a report called Science is Us. It's a play on the Science is the US, Science is Us. And it's a phenomenal STEM ecosystem report. We released one this year on 2023 data, which predicts at this point in time that over 80% of all careers and jobs in the US require some level of STEM skills. And so this job market, this figure of 3.5, which is a conservative number, those are for very kind of classically understood STEM jobs. But the reality is that the workforce requires much more STEM education across all fields. Obviously, there's an innovation imperative here. Scientific breakthroughs require diverse perspectives, and inclusive STEM education really cultivates collaborative thinking, the collaborative thinking that's needed for solving today's greatest challenges. For those of you that are more familiar with AAAS, this will sound familiar, but if you're newer to AAAS, the one sentence about what AAAS is we are an organization that seeks to advance science through bold inclusion. And we underwent a really, really thoughtful strategic planning process in 2022 and 2023. We went from 9 strategic priorities to 4 strategic priorities, and 2 of those 4 remained the same from the previous 9 that we had operated under for decades. And they are this dual, what we call the dual imperative of advancing science and having bold inclusion. We think that those are inextricably linked. And so much like we think about widening the aperture so that we can have the best innovation in science moving towards a problem, we think about that in the scientific kind of enterprise as well. So, from an economic or an innovation standpoint, we can't afford a homogeneous pipeline. I would also say we can't afford pipelines, we need pathways. And I would also add here that, scientific literacy, as I mentioned in the last slide, it's about informed civic engagement and critical thinking. We are educating the next generation of problem solvers and leaders. And so science education is broadly applicable and critical in a democracy. So as we're thinking about how do we lead in this moment, I would like to posit that we really can become and must become catalysts for change, that people and institutions that spark broader transformation, and that requires 4 pivotal pieces. First off, it requires strategic problem solving. We can't do this by gut feeling alone. We need evidence-based approaches to this work and to the challenges that we're facing. It requires inclusive and adaptive teaching. We have to meet students where they are while maintaining and creating rigor and belonging. And I think we have to be really articulate internally within our community, but especially externally, about how these ideas and goals around creating more inclusive educational communities that increase the success, that end up increasing the success of more students, do not, by their function, start off with this the kind of equity of outcome in mind. I think that this is an argument that we have to be really thoughtful for in this current moment. I hear and contend with, even on the Hill, this notion that if educational organizations are simply trying to have the same outcome, the only way to do that is by lowering standards, lowering merit, lowering rigor. And I think what we have to be really thoughtful and careful about is how we talk about that we are not seeking an equity of outcome for that sake, but rather we're seeking to ensure that all people who are willing to put in the hard work have opportunity to learn and to grow. And so what we're seeking actually is equity of opportunity, because we know that talent abounds in all communities and opportunity does not. And so thinking about how we make structural arguments, how we design policies, not so that there's, being mindful of kind of these kind of false attitudes of zero-sum games or dichotomies around inclusion and rigor being at odds. I think there's an opportunity for us to really think clearly about how we communicate in kind of practical terms without jargon about the work we do, the ways we do that work, and how important it is. We're doing a lot of that work at AAAS and with our partners, and we're happy to work with the community to continue to think about how we communicate that well. And I think that that goes hand in hand in also thinking about how we do really, really thoughtful, excellent science communication in general. And it's about how we communicate really complex ideas clearly for the public, clearly for policymakers, and how we talk about science as an ever evolving and changing process. And that's how we, and that's garners, increased trust along the way. I think part of that is in us thinking clearly about interdisciplinary partnerships, really thinking continually how we remove silos so that we can increase innovation, and in particular, looking for innovation at the intersections of its interdisciplinarity. I think in a wonderful way, we continue to see over the past several decades that we have shifted away from science as this kind of lone wolf mentality, and we really have focused in on the power of teams and cross-sector partnerships to do some of the most advanced work that we've ever been able to accomplish. I think that interdisciplinarity process and part is part of the catalyst for change in this respect. So us thinking about how we advance science and science education in collaboration with, our experts on communication, experts on education policy, our government affairs teams. These are all groups that exist within our institutions that we should be thinking about. But obviously, there's intersectionalities across and outside of our institutions in the higher ed sector as well. And then finally, this catalyst for change, of course, has to take this continued focus on systemic change. This is a long game. And right now, one of the biggest concerns that I have as I look across the field is that we're understandably doing a lot of responding to current changes and structures that are being deconstructed or decimated without kind of regard. And we have to balance responding to those critical needs and thinking about the long-term goals. I have never forgotten something that the very first time I met with my PhD advisor as a baby PhD student, I had the privilege of my advisor had just returned to the faculty, having served as an administrator for a decade. And I received, I think, a lot of wisdom from his time period as a higher education administrator. My background, my academic background is in higher education, studying colleges and universities and systems of change. And when I was talking to him about navigating the PhD process and the years to come, feeling very much as an imposter and out of my wits, I was like, isn't a bachelor's degree enough? Now I have a master's and I'm pursuing a PhD. I must be really bad at school here to be still doing this, right? But my advisor said something to me that's always stuck with me, and it's a little catch-22-ish, but he said, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. I'll repeat that. The main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. I have learned over the years, listen, when he first said this to me, I was like, this man is loony. This is one of those quirky professors. He doesn't know what he's talking about. That's like circular rationale here. I have since learned how important that quote really is. And I think in times of great transition and challenge like we're going through, those words continue to come back to me. We have to maintain both responses to all of the changes that are going on while we also keep in mind the long-term strategic and systemic change that is required for us as a STEM community to better our own ecosystem. We can't rely on others to do that. We have to be bold in holding up a mirror to ourselves, understanding the challenges and the areas where we need to grow, evolve, and change. And we should be using every opportunity to do that as we move forward and dream about what the most excellent STEM ecosystem can and should be and do for our community. We have to keep hold of that in the midst of all of the chaos and tumult that we're experiencing. Because if we lose sight of that, we will lose out on the precious kind of momentum that we have to keep going to really achieve the change we're looking for. So the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. I also want to take a moment to invest in you all in some capacity building. So while we're talking about kind of bigger ideas, catalyzing change, thinking about your role as leaders, AAAS is an incredible organization. I have been there almost 5 years. February will be 5 years for me at AAAS. It has flown by. I have been a member longer than that. And in 5 years, I feel like I'm just starting to have a full appreciation of most of the things that AAAS as an organization does. I still learn things new every day. I am incredibly lucky to work in an organization with truly brilliant colleagues that just do incredible work. And I know that that is the way that many of you feel working in your institutions. If you have been less involved in AAAS, I strongly encourage you to become more familiar with our organization. Most of the resources and tools that we create are freely available to members and non-members. It's one of the things I love about our organization. We really think about our service to the field. And so much of the programmatic resources and items and webinars that we produce are open publicly. That being said, if you want to become a member, and I strongly encourage you to think about adding your voice and your vote to those structures. We are the world's largest general scientific association, and it is a privilege to act on behalf of our members in representing the scientific community in some really pivotal spaces and getting to work across federal agencies, getting to work across multiple presidential administrations, and really thinking in broad terms about this work. I wanted to share with you a couple. It's so hard for me to pick what things to like highlight for folks when I'm getting to chat about AAAS. I've pulled a few from our center that I hope might have some particular relevance for you. One I wanted to chat about is our Science in the Classroom initiative. These slides, by the way, just in case anybody didn't see, are available in full PDF in Cubes. So you have access to all these slides, but I did put hyperlinks and QR codes where I could figure out how to make QR codes effectively. That is a skill I'm still learning. But Science in the Classroom is a wonderful teacher opportunity, especially, or resource, especially for those of you who might be teaching gateway courses in STEM. And if you're working, we find that a lot of kind of entry-level STEM classrooms, faculty will use this materials, our Science in Classroom materials. Also, some AP, a lot of AP courses, faculty working in high school will use these resources. The Science in the Classroom resources, we take original scientific research published in Science, of course, our science community of journals that we produce, AAAS, but also across HHMI, Nature, producers. And we actually work with the authors and a team of annotators to, through a really, really lovely platform, make those scientific articles fully annotated in ways that teachers can use, the faculty can use these resources with their students. All of those resources come with They're freely available. They come with a teacher's guide, so a teaching supplement. And what we seek to do in this work is a couple of things. One, we want to help provide resources where faculty can engage their students in original research earlier in their careers, help them understand how to navigate research. We know many of you spend a lot of your time helping students understand how to navigate peer-reviewed articles. The other thing that we do in this work is, you'll notice if you check out this resource, it's all online, it's digital, you hover over annotations and it gives you all this great information, but you can also kind of layer in the types of annotation available. And one of the things that we really try to do is we work with the authors to really highlight where in the research process does an article not show where big decisions had to be made, or where something went really wrong, where there was a mistake that occurred. Because oftentimes we don't get to see that in a published article, right? And so we try to highlight for students really the messiness in a beautiful way of science, so that they can help build confidence and understand that science is this incredible process. So here's just a resource. We hope that you'll check it out. We're constantly putting out new material, so please mark it as a bookmark, share it with your friends. This is a great resource. Another resource that I wanted to share, which is emblematic of other types of work that we do have several specific to student-facing opportunities within our unit. One of them is called Entry Point. This is an internship opportunity for students with disabilities in STEM. We connect students with disabilities, STEM scholars, directly with research labs and industry internships for the summer. They're all paid. We help do a match between our partners that are looking for interns and the scholars that are looking for internships. And one of the things that we do in this process is that we really try to help ensure that these internship providers have the resources they need to make sure that this is an accessible opportunity for the students engaging. One of the things that we're really happy about is that we have found that the partners we work with, for many organizations and industry leaders, there's a real unfounded myth around what it's like to provide employment opportunities for persons with disabilities. And these internships are a wonderful way for us to build out those resources for industry leaders, and they lead to a number of job offers, which is critically important. If you know the research around scientists with disabilities and their access to actual job offers, it's abysmally low, primarily due to misinformation on industry leaders' parts about what reasonable accommodations really mean. So we have, again, several programs across our unit that work with students. We also, for instance, have several scholarly opportunities. We have a program that happens every spring called the Emerging Researchers National Conference, or EARN, where undergraduate and graduate students can present their own STEM research. They can actually compete for awards, financial awards. We have travel awards for that program. We also work in our STEM. For those of you that are involved in NSF's Scholarships in STEM program, we run an annual scholars meeting, which is all about professional development for students. In addition to direct to students, direct to faculty engagements, we also try to provide a lot of the resources we provide are thinking about how we can engage or support kind of capacity building for organizations. Sea Change, in particular, our Sea Change Institute is one of the ways that we really think about equipping faculty, department chairs, and even senior leaders with the skills that they need to successfully catalyze and sustain systemic change in their organizations. What does it mean to really understand how mission-aligned work can move forward? And I'll talk a little bit more about that on my next slide. I want to highlight two courses that we just created that I want to highlight for you all, really responding to the current moment. And we do that kind of institutional capacity building also at the national level. So I also wanted to highlight for you all the STEM Opportunity Alliance, SOA, as we call it. The STEM Opportunity Alliance is a national cross-sector movement that we launched in 2022, working in close collaboration with the White House Office of Science, Technology, and Policy. This is a bipartisan supported initiative that works across K-12, higher education, private philanthropy, industry, research and capacity groups, research labs, national labs, and formal and informal kind of education opportunities. We spent the first 14 months of this alliance in co-constructing a community-developed national strategic plan for America's STEM and STEM education ecosystem. We held 17 meetings across the country, all hybrid, all with travel stipends, and we had written feedback from more than almost 2,000 organizations and individuals creating a national strategic plan for STEM. It's the country's first ever national strategic plan, and we are now in the process of implementing that plan. We have been for the last year now, implementing that plan across partners. SOA is free to join. It's a great place if even if your institution might not be interested in joining, but if you want to be connected and want to glean from this this alliance, there's a lot of phenomenal resources coming through. It's a real great way to think about kind of how do we translate what's going on in our classroom at our institutions to the broader national ecosystem. And SOA is one of the ways that we can do that. It is very much intended to be an implementation partnership arm of Chips and Science. We were approached particularly because of wanting to create an organization coalition outside of the federal government that could help us keep our long-term goals that were instituted within Chips and Science in this way and have alignment across sectors. So that's what that work is really about. I know I'm throwing a lot of information at you all, but I promise and a reminder, Q&A is literally around the corner. I'm on slide 8 of 12, and the 12th slide is just Q&A. So just priming you a little bit to think about questions that you might have. I mentioned our Sea Change Institute, which I'm going to give you some very confidential, if you tell anybody I said this, or if you tweet this, I will say you are a liar. But I want you all to know that we're actually in the process of gearing up for a broader learning management system for all of AAAS. Yes, you're hearing it, but you didn't hear it. And we're going to be expanding what has been our Sea Change Institute to a broader AAAS learning hub, which I'm really, really excited about. Keep an eye out. That should launch this fall. We're really, really excited about what we've been doing behind the scenes for over a year is not only building that space, but thinking about all of the ways that we as AAAS can build capacity for our members or people that think of themselves as our members. We have a tremendous number of people that think they're AAAS members, but aren't formally dues-paying members. This set of courses, Opportunity by Design, are two of those ways. These are live in our Sea Change Institute, which, by the way, you have to have a AAAS sign-on, a AAAS login to get to these resources, but that's a free thing. That's not connected to AAAS membership, just as a reminder. This is just so that we have a formal way of people registering and knowing who's going to coming into spaces. But within our Sea Change Institute, we have a 2-part course that we just released called Opportunity by Design. It is a culmination. It's really beautiful, y'all. I've spent the last year designing these online modules with my team, poring over the scripts and the questions, and we're in the process of making some videos that will be kind of going into this as well, but the courses are done. We've launched them. This is a set of courses that are specifically designed to give faculty, department chairs, provosts, associate provosts, deans, in particular, higher education leaders who do not have a legal background. Do you all have JDs on top of your PhDs? Anyone? Anyone? No? Yeah. Most of us don't, right? Although I did used to teach higher ed law. I love higher education law. It's one of my areas of expertise and real passion. But I wanted to be able to translate that information and in particular, translate the actual United States law around diversity, equity, and inclusion for higher education leaders in a way that was law attentive, up to date, and just clear. So we first started making a set of resources where we were working with a team of incredible lawyers, and the material that we got was incredibly dense and incredibly hard to read, even for myself, trained in this area. So we, over the last year and a half, have been taking those materials and making them really for a non-legally trained audience. So we've now released these courses. They are freely available. The first one, part one, focuses on student enrollment and educational benefit. If you and your work ever work around kind of, enrollment, whether it's for undergraduate or graduate students, if you're making enrollment decisions, this is important information to if you're involved in recruitment of students into your programs, if you're designing programs that help your students succeed, any program where a student gets access to educational benefit, that could be information, it could be scholarships, it could be travel funding for a conference. There are specific legal parameters for how those programs should be designed. And it's really important, especially post the 2023 SCOTUS decision around race-based, race-conscious admission, that all of your programs, whether they're around enrollment or not, actually conform to that set of law. This is a course that will help you really understand how that all works. And our goal is to really give most people in higher education, even if you don't have a higher ed background, some more knowledge around that. Similarly, part two is all about faculty and employee recruitment, hiring, and retention. The law in the US operates, we have different sets of law around enrollment for students and any employment law. So those are two very different strands of law that are managed in very different ways and have different kind of requirements. So we have these two courses that we've just released. In the fall, we will be releasing, if you're somebody that says, look, love that you're doing these courses, but I really like to learn with other people, you might get that complaint from your students every now and then, and having a completely asynchronous course isn't quite your learning method. We will be offering kind of flipped classrooms with a synchronous option for folks to join in both of these coming in the fall and the spring. So, you could log in, start to get the information. There's a tremendous number of resources attached to these courses. But if you're looking for more of a cohort traditional kind of class experience where you're learning with other leaders, those will be coming available as well. Okay, I've given you a whole bunch of resources, hopefully to support you and your work and your students. But I also want to pause here and acknowledge that burnout is real, but so is hope. And hope isn't naive optimism. It's fuel for action. Research shows that educators who cultivate pragmatic hope, which is this idea around hope being paired with strategy, are far more resilient and build more positive learning environments for their students and their colleagues. So I want to really take a moment to think about, this isn't about pretending that things aren't hard. It's really about recognizing the hard stuff and choosing to act anyway. I'm reminded in particular of one of my favorite AAAS past presidents, Margaret Mead. If you aren't familiar, Margaret Mead is a AAAS past president. And I take to heart her words, these words: never doubt that a small group of thoughtful and committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. That has been a rallying cry for me throughout my career. I came upon this quote as a student, not ever knowing that I'd be working for the organization that she led for a period of time. But I hope that will also encourage us to think about really this idea of pragmatic hope. And in particular, I want to shout out the ways that we can continue to build that pragmatic hope by maximizing this incredible conference. So use this time to connect, use this time to strategize, and please use this time to think about how you might advocate. We are in a time right now where we have a window of opportunity around a major hurdle coming up. The 2026 federal budget. This is the thing that if you're working in STEM research or STEM education, anywhere connected to federal kind of affairs, this is the most pressing element for everybody in the science community on the Hill. We are at a unique pivot point where advocacy for science education and science research is critical right now. And making sure that in 2026, the kind of further erosion of funding in this space, in particular at the national labs, at NIH and at NSF, is crucial. I will say specifically at specifically at NSF and the Directorate of EDU, the Educational Directorate. If you're less familiar, although I doubt with this community this would be the case, most of you probably know that EDU, the amount of funding to STEM education that EDU provides, which has historically been about $1 billion a year, billion with a B, it's like a watermelon to a pea compared to all other science education funding in our country. Private philanthropy, corporate philanthropy does not begin to approach the true size and scale of EDU. That is also the directorate that has been the most cut through grant terminations, through personnel, and in budgeting. That will have generational effects upon our STEM education and STEM talent development if that continues. I think it already will have a profound effect, has had a profound effect. It will have an even larger, more impactful, detrimentally impactful effect. So if you're interested in doing advocacy, I just want to point out that we have a tremendous number of resources available to people who want to do advocacy on STEM education and STEM research. I've linked here. If you scroll through this page, we have webinars that we do publicly on how to understand the federal budget. Not that you really need to have a in-depth understanding of it. How to track that moving forward. We have scripts that we have prepared. If you want to say, like, I'm willing to email my representative, we can help you with understanding what you might say. If you don't know who your representatives are, we actually have a tool that helps understand by where you live, where your residency is, who your representatives are in both the Senate and the House. And then most importantly, I'll say, for those of you that are interested in doing visits or phone calls, August in particular will be a phenomenal month. Congress will be on recess. Electeds will be in their home spaces, their home territories. And that's a phenomenal space for you to have a meeting with your representatives, because you can do something that's vitally important. You can take the numbers, the stats, the data that organizations like AAAS, really do incredible work providing, but you can put a face and a name and a story, and the story of your community, the parents, the students, the small businesses. You can put real people to all of that data. And what we know is that the data is important. We can share all of that data with you from AAAS, but the stories in the community and the actual connection to real constituents' homes, that's what changes hearts and minds. That's what actually influences the way that electeds vote on bills, what they will fight for, what they will be strategic about. So I'm going to step off my soapbox. Sorry for that mini plug, but it's so important right now. And I hope you'll consider, you all have incredible voice and opportunity here. There's power in community. And I just want to remind you all that during this time here with each other, this is an opportunity for you to expand STEM opportunities. It's an opportunity for you to strategize with each other about how we're cultivating the next generation of STEM. It's about how we continue to be catalysts in our space. We need to expand STEM opportunities, especially for those that are all too often left out. We need to build the next generation of just scientists, ethical, collaborative leaders. We need to keep science as a global catalyst for human progress, for human health, sanitation, well-being, security. And that all happens through community power. That's exactly what BIOME is all about. I have gone over my allotment and not given you enough time for Q&A, so I'm jumping there right now. I'm going to stop sharing my slides, and I'm going to dive into questions that you all have probably already been listing. Thank you all for allowing me some time to go over.
Thank you, Travis. That was great. There was a lot of chatter in the chat area. Fewer questions maybe, but though people may be holding those. But Definitely people commenting on programs that you mentioned that they had participated in or were aware of or used the resources. And my favorite statement, this is the keynote address that I didn't know that I needed. So
That's very generous. Thank you all.
it's a good one.
I'm I'm happy to have questions posted in the chat, but also please feel free to come off mute and speak into the space if anybody has a question. I see one coming up from Stacy.
Yep, and then we'll go to Joy after Stacy's.
Perfect.
Do you want to
As
read
a
your
social,
Stacy?
yeah,
Oh,
as a social scientist, what suggestions do you have for us about persuading administrators, students, families, friends about the need for diversity in science? That's a great question. Um, I do think that having a set of kind of robust ways, I find that different audiences really come at this question in really different ways, and I have found that um, unless you know arguments that are going to be more persuasive to a particular group of people, which you probably do have some ideas about that. Um, I like to kind of lead into these conversations with more of the kind of gambit. I like to talk about, that I like to talk about forefronting the actual impact of inclusive and diverse spaces on the quality of science we do. We have a tremendous amount of evidence that literally shows that we do better science, we innovate at higher rates, we produce solutions that are more applicable to larger swaths of the population through more diverse and inclusive kind of working teams and groups. There's an economic argument here. There's a lot of great kind of economic reports that get put out every year that show that even amongst senior leaders in industry, more diverse and more gender equitable, in particular, leadership in industry literally grosses higher revenue dollars. So there's an economic argument. There's obviously a tax and workforce argument that I think is really strong. I think one of the things that I like to keep primary here is that when we talk about increasing diversity and excellence and inclusion in STEM, we're not saying we want more of a particular group in STEM. The reality of the STEM workforce is that we need more people from every walk of life going into STEM. This is about increasing opportunities for everybody, low income persons, rural, urban, every race, every gender, veterans, persons with disabilities, sexual gender minorities. This is really a space where we need more people coming into STEM from every different facet of life. And so this is not a space where we're trying to increase opportunity for some group. It is increasing opportunities for all. And I think the more that we can talk about how a focus on barrier removal does that. It increases opportunities for all groups. And that's a really important factor to kind of, we have to kind of distance ourselves from the very incorrect, wrong idea that DEI is discriminatory, which has been illegal in the US since the 50s. It's not discriminatory, it's not selective, it's not a zero-sum game, and we need to really clearly articulate that. Joy?
Yes, hello, Travis. Thank you so
Hi.
much for your excellent presentation. And, I'm sure I'm not the only one in academe who feels like a deer in headlights. And you mentioned the word hope, and I think that, gosh, with all the changes, and the changes how it affects my work personally, I have felt like a deer in headlights, and
For sure.
definitely fear and anxiety and all that stuff going on. So that's why I said your hopeful message was the message I needed, because I'm that deer in headlights thinking, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do, or what am I gonna do
Yeah.
now? So I just want to thank you for your message, but I do have a specific question. I work I work in higher education in your area as well. Higher education administration is the doctoral
Mhm.
program I work for. And basically, I work with high school students who are in transitioning from either high school to college, or transitioning from high school to career
Mhm.
or some sort of other training. And I was wondering, for that specific area of growth and development, do you have a specific program that I can direct my young people to, because I think a lot of what you mentioned is more for undergraduates, but not all of my students are undergraduates at this moment,
Yeah.
or they don't plan on going to higher education. They want to do like another type of training, but they're interested in STEM. They're
Yeah.
interested in STEM. They're just not interested in a 4-year degree. So
Yeah.
any program recommendations
I
that
do.
okay, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, one that comes immediately to my mind is actually a state-based opportunity. So it will depend somewhat on the states in your service region where your students are located.
Okay.
But there's actually an organization. It actually started within AAAS and now is its own organization. It's called NAAS. It's the National Association of Academies of Science.
Okay.
Um, and back in the day, AAAS, by the way, is 176 years old. It's very old.
Uh-huh.
And back in the day, in addition to the national organization, you had these state kind of chapters, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, over time, they have evolved. Many of these state societies, the state name, I think 48 of the 50 states and several territories have these organizations. And these state societies, one of the great things about them is many times they actually work primarily with high school students thinking
Okay.
about college degrees, but also thinking about into workforce. They're unique. Each one is slightly different. Um, but they do have some really great ways to tie in for high school students. One of the programs that NAAS runs, another long acronym, of course, is
Mm-hmm.
AJAS. And honestly, I think it's the American
AJS.
Junior Society. I don't know the full acronym, to be honest, AJAS.
Okay.
But AJAS is a program that NAAS puts on, and they actually support students going and participating in science fairs, but really sophisticated science fairs. And then the winners from those states actually come to AAAS's annual meeting and
Okay.
present their posters actually at AAAS's annual meeting, which is pretty cool. That
Okay.
might not be the right pathway for some of the students you're talking about. They may not be doing research, they may not be interested in research, but I still wonder if these organizations might be a great locally oriented connector to other pathways into industry and into higher ed within
Mm-hmm.
your states. So that's one
Okay.
organization I think of. I'll give this some more thought too in case I think of anything else, and I can message you through the app. Also,
That's great.
I just want to thank you for being so honest and um, vulnerable with us about feeling that deer in the headlights. I think it's really important that we share when we feel that way, because
Mhm.
that type of honesty is so powerful in letting other people know it's okay that others feel that way. And I just want to
Yeah,
thank you for sharing.
most definitely. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. I see some other great tips coming into the chat as well. And um, Pat, I see. I see hey, Pat. Yes, all of my slides and links and QR codes are available in the biome under this keynote. There's a link to all of my slides. You have all of the QR codes and links, FYI. See, they're there
I
for you.
am also creating a collection for all of the resources that you shared, as well as all of the resources that other people dropped into the
Oh,
chat. So I'm
phenomenal.
doing
Can't
that
wait to
right
get
now.
that.
It will
That's
be in
incredible.
the
Thank you.
collections.
And we have a discussion forum that is tied directly to this keynote. So we're going to transition into breakout groups pretty quickly here, but you might want to open up the discussion forum associated with the keynote and just, drop in a brief summary of the takeaway points or additional resources that your small group came up with. And feel free to post any follow-up questions, and we can sort of sift through them and pass them by Travis and see if he can take a whack at them after the fact. But I want to add in my thanks to Travis. Very thoughtful presentation, really spanning a great deal of undergraduate and high school STEM education reform. Maybe I'll ask you someday whether you think that AAAS will ever come back and work on the Vision and Change document again. That was specific to undergraduate biology education.
We are in discussions right now with some program officers about and evolution to vision and change.
Because I know you guys played a big role in that initially. And good, good. Well, let's all thank Travis and let's keep the conversation going.